I'm Anthony Esposito. I live at 79 Myers Road. I would like to begin by submitting this map as an exhibit showing all the properties in town that this proposed zoning change would affect. There are 45 of them, totaling nearly 2,000 acres. Everyone in this room has one of these parcels near them. If passed, this would be a windfall for developers. For as long as the land holds out, Bethany would be the development capital of Connecticut. I have copies of the map for anybody who's interested. It's been put about that the state will force us to build affordable housing and that this proposal is a better alternative. That is simply not true. Halter Estates Incorporated was granted permission, just permission, to build 48 units, some of which were affordable. The state will not force us or anyone else to build anything, and will certainly not be spending money to build housing for us. There is no gun to Bethany's head. It's not as if it's this proposal or those 48 units. It's simply not the case. Greenhaven has been pushing itself as very green and politically correct, and therefore is some kind of perfect steward for this property. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. There's a lot of green paint on this proposal, but not much true green. First of all, they stole a perfectly green term, open space housing district. Doesn't that sound nice? Well, if that was really what was being proposed, there would be 9 houses on this piece of ground, not 35. True open space housing does not break zoning. So the first and most important green precept has been violated. That alone makes it difficult to distinguish this project from any other condo development. They're also calling for sustainable agriculture, another green buzzword. Well, that's a term you use if agriculture is your business. Succinctly, it means you don't take out of the ground more than can be replenished. But that doesn't have anything at all to do with gardening, which is what at best will be happening here. It takes plenty of acreage to support a family through agriculture, and here there are only about 6 acres to support 35 families. I looked at figures for all the co-housing projects in Massachusetts that had statistics for food production. Well, 1 through 5% of their total food requirement was the very best that any of them did. So all that means is that some people will garden. So sustainable agriculture, just another stolen green term. Moreover, there's nothing whatsoever in the application that would oblige that they garden. Nor is there a syllable in there about what agricultural practices might be employed, what pesticides might be used, what animals might be raised, etc. The moral high ground here is held not by a developer, but by the townspeople supporting the original, unchanged zoning regulations. These have, for more than 60 years, successfully protected the land, the water, and our rural heritage. I would like to know why Patsy Weiner has not recused herself. She, her sister, and her niece all own land abutting this development. She certainly has an interest in the way this matter plays out. She's been involved with this from the very beginning, and she has been at every P&Z meeting involving this issue. And she's been active elsewhere than the P&Z meetings. Back in June of 2012, she helped Greenhaven present the general proposal to the Myers Road residents. It was held at her niece Louise Harder's home, also on Myers Road. She brought planning and zoning maps, and it was apparent to the residents of Myers Road just where her sentiments lay. This commission has before it exactly the regulation it wants to pass. There is ample evidence that this commission is biased, to the point that this public hearing is little more than a charade. Quotes demonstrating the bias are ample. I am submitting as exhibits sound recordings of all the pertinent meetings. But here's a sampling for you. Here's Melissa Spear, quote, "I only want to cite historical context. How many years ago now, Patsy? It was probably 25 years ago. We actually proposed a set of regulations here in Bethany very similar to this, and we actually had, and I'm trying to remember his name, but he was the guru of open space development out of Massachusetts. Randall Arendt came and gave a presentation to the town, and this was in the context of doing our first town plan. We're not totally unfamiliar with this. We actually tried very hard to pass regulations similar to this 25 years ago," unquote. Mary Shirtleff, quote, "I would also be curious whether or not there are other areas in this town that might be appropriate for this type of development. And my only concern being that we don't want this to be spot zoning. So we do have to be sure that there are other potential areas that might be considered for this," unquote. Mary Shirtleff again, "Part of what we're doing is trying to site this property, these units, in the most advantageous way possible on our site, given our resources," unquote. Hiram Peck, quote, "I think it's an interesting process, an interesting project, which has a lot of potential for positive benefits for the town," unquote. Hiram Peck again, quote, "If we get the number of units reduced to 35, we get the units reconfigured to the way we are talking about. We get 50% of the property as open space and some of the units are affordable. That would be really a sort of a win-win-win," unquote. I'm also submitting copies of several of Hiram Peck's bills. I can't tell you the exact amount that taxpayers have spent to prepare this zoning regulation for the applicant, since the first selectman refused to provide that information to me. Interpolation from the bills indicates that more than $2,200 of taxpayer money has been expended to make sure that this private applicant submits exactly the proposal the commission is seeking. Taxpayer money spent on a private developer. I personally think that stinks. Shame on you, commission. Ms. Gorski, I'm now rebuking you from the podium. The Bethany Bulletin is not your personal publication. It belongs to the town of Bethany. As co-editor, if you are willing to print a letter from Greenhaven, then you must be equally willing to print a letter from rural Bethany. When you experience this sort of discrimination, when you have a general coalition of offices and commissions promoting a private developer, when they tell you this is the lesser of two evils, and when they tell you they know what's good for you, it doesn't take a genius to know just whose good they really have in mind.
Are you close to being finished?
No, I'm not. Thank you.
There are lots of other people that would like to speak.
I'm presenting to the commission a protest petition pursuant to section 8-3B of the Connecticut General Statutes. Were you to change the zoning regulations, you would be obliged to do so by a 2/3 vote. A simple majority would be insufficient. The statute reads, quote, "If a protest against a proposed change is filed at or before a hearing with the zoning commission, signed by the owners of 20% or more of the area of the lots included in such proposed change, or of the lots within 500 feet in all directions of the property included in the proposed change, such change shall not be adopted except by a vote of 2/3 of all the members of the commission," unquote. The petition I have meets all the requirements for such a limitation. I'm also presenting a petition signed by 1,375 citizens of Bethany, demanding that this commission disapprove the zoning change establishing an open space housing district in any form in Bethany. Some citizens signed online, some signed in person, mostly at the recycling center, and some mailed their signatures to the P&Z. Their signature on this petition clearly states their opposition to any zoning change which would permit dense development in Bethany. Support for this petition crossed all traditional boundaries. Families who have been in Bethany for generations, as well as families who moved here recently, were opposed to this. Political affiliation did not matter. Those in their 20s, as well as those in their 90s, were against it. Those with large land tracts and people with the minimum acreage were equally willing to sign. There has been very little support for this zoning change in town. The will of the people is very strongly against it. And I have yet another petition signed by the requisite number of citizens requesting a referendum on this issue, should the Planning and Zoning Commission vote for this zoning change despite solid public opposition. I will not submit this petition now because it is an expense the town need not incur unless this commission flaunts the will of the people by voting in favor of this change. Since this proposed change has little support among Bethany citizens, I expect this no vote to be the end of it. I've been told that there cannot be a referendum on a zoning issue. This is America. You cannot frustrate the will of the people. If the applicant continues to push this issue forward, this movement, which has grown from a few people to nearly 1,400 in just a few weeks, will champion the townspeople to a referendum, even if that referendum must be court-ordered. If the commission votes for this proposal, it will be challenged in court. I think there are ample grounds upon which the vote would be nullified by the court system, nor are the courts our only avenue of recourse. Bethany citizens will not let a few well-connected individuals determine its future. If there is anyone in this room who has not yet signed the petitions and would like to do so, now is your opportunity. Thank you very much.